All right, back to more Russia stuff, but this time with a twist. So Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are going back to Moscow today to talk to Putin and the rest of the team to talk about that 28-point peace plan, which is terrible for a multitude of reasons. But here's the twist. So the threatening of strikes on ships. So why is it important? Why do we care? In an interesting twist of fates, there's been kind of an evolution of this gray warfare tactic being used against Russian ships. Now, it's funny because Russia is a regular employer of these gray warfare tactics. Not direct strikes like what's been happening on Russian ships, but Russia maligns regularly Western ships in different sea, Baltics, and et cetera. So it's interesting to see that these tactics are being employed in the opposite direction. So much so that ahead of the Jared Kushner, Witkoff talks today, Putin said that if these strikes continue, that they'll be able to respond, Russia will be able to respond in kind to the ships of any country that supports, materially or otherwise, supports Ukraine. So obviously most of NATO, et cetera, et cetera. They're pretty much false threats. A lot of Russia's ammunition and equipment is obviously focused on its war against Ukraine. But the more important piece here is what it says for the global trading system. So stop me if I sound a little bit too much like Peter Zion here, but I think this party's right. Is that post-World War II, one of the big pillars of the new global system of governance and order was that the U.S. Navy would patrol and protect the global sea routes for trade, so that individual countries and economies could focus on just that, developing their industries and economies. Now that that's starting to break down, we're starting to see fractionalization, regionalization, just a general lack of interest by the U.S. to play that role in the future. Well, countries that benefited from that system, not just U.S. allies and just Western countries in general, but now would have turned into major U.S. adversaries, obviously China and Russia, which definitely benefited from that system as well. You see them turning to more land-based trade between each other and then, of course, beyond. So for Russia and China, this includes a lot of stuff like pipelines, tech trade, stuff that cannot be influenced by global sea trade routes. So this is where you also see terms like nearshoring, friendshoring, reshoring occur, because as that system breaks down and sea trade becomes more unreliable, of which we should know 80 to 90% of all trade is still seaborne trade here in 2025, it's incredibly important to maintain avenues of access to all things, but critically important, commodities, material, baseline infrastructure, stuff that you need to build economies. So this broader trend of deglobalization, which is fueling the headlines like the above, attacks on ships and fractionalization, regionalization, is probably only going to continue, and only through asymmetry in countries that have asymmetric advantages via navies and other means of influence power. That's, especially when it comes to waterways, that's who you're going to see be winning in the next 5 to 10 plus years. So like to subscribe for more.